Elon Musk is transforming X to support citizen journalism rather than the corrupt legacy media. The CIA's historical involvement in UFO crash retrieval operations has been exposed. Nomination to be an advisor to the incoming Trump administration on innovative technology. Luis Elizondo's opening statement for the Congressional UAP hearing proposes 3 actions to rectify many problems raised by lack of proper government oversight, transparency, and accountability. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy's new Department of Governmental Efficiency will soon learn that government inefficiency is the lifeblood of the deep state's black budget. Summary and highlights of the November 13 UAP hearing. The Department of Defense Deputy Secretary of Defense Susan Gough outed as a professional psychological officer involved in UFO-related issues. Whistleblower report on Immaculate Constellation UAP program has been publicly released. Denmark just became the 48th nation to sign the US-led Artemis Accords. The new Arrow Office report released states that none of the 485 UAP cases shows any evidence of breakthrough technologies or advanced capabilities or of extraterrestrial life. These stories and more in Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome to the November 16 edition of Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review. I have quite a lot of information to cover. It has been a big week for UFO-related news, so let's just dive into it. So I want to begin with a speech by President-elect Donald Trump concerning free speech. So let me just play the first 30 seconds of this clip where you get to hear his views on free speech and why it's so important.
If we don't have free speech, then we just don't have a free country. It's as simple as that. If this most fundamental right is allowed to perish, then the rest of our rights and liberties will topple, just like dominoes, one by one. They'll go down. That's why today I'm announcing my plan to shatter the left-wing censorship regime and to reclaim the right to free speech for all Americans. And reclaim is a very important word in this case because they've taken it away. In recent weeks.
Okay, well, that gives you an idea of Donald Trump's stand on free speech, and he's absolutely correct that there has been a climate of censorship that has been fostered by those on the political left. And now that he's been elected to president, he's in a position to do something about it. And that's very important. Why is it important when it comes to UFOs, extraterrestrial life, crypto-terrestrial secret space programs? It's free speech is important because at the moment, these are topics that are widely dismissed and ridiculed, and the mainstream media just doesn't take them seriously. But that day will change, or that will change in the future. And in the future, there'll be news coming out. And even today, there's news coming out on how, for example, in deep underground military bases, children are being used for various nefarious things, that there are sex slaves. And these kinds of revelations concerning these dark activities in DUMBs are routinely censored on major platforms such as YouTube. And full disclosure has many disturbing aspects, and free speech protection is vital to disseminating the truth about what's been happening and identifying the perpetrators. And so without free speech, you won't be able to identify exactly what's been happening, whether it's in deep underground military bases, whether it's in deep space with galactic slave trade, the oppressive use of workers, these different abuses that are happening with regard to these programs, they need to be exposed. And without free speech, people exposing those can be targeted for vilifying or for hate speech or whatever justification is used for censoring their content. Now, here is a compilation of speaker interview clips from the 2024 Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection Conference in Westminster, Colorado. So this is where Alex Collier, Leonard Danan, Tony Rodriguez, Dr. Lee Merritt, Jerry Wills, many others, including myself, we are being interviewed, and we are giving our kind of like summary views on a range of exopolitical topics. So there's Alex Collier. So this is on Danny Henderson's YouTube channel. She's the organizer of the GSIC Conference. And the next one is going to be in May 11 and 12, I believe, in Eastbourne, East Sussex, England. And that's something definitely for those that are interested can attend there. So definitely take a look at that and enjoy that range of interviews or video clips from all the speakers at that conference. Now, here is something that I thought was very, very interesting, and this concerns Alex Collier, who is a legend among extraterrestrial contactees. He's been active since 1991, and he has said that according to the information from the Andromedan extraterrestrials that he's in contact with, that the negative extraterrestrials have left the Earth and our solar system due to the intervention of positive extraterrestrials. And so this is just confirmation for the information from others that have been talking about negative extraterrestrials such as the Draconian Reptilian Empire, the Orion Greys leaving our solar system, because this is a topic that creates a lot of division in the alternative community. There are a lot of people that say the negative extraterrestrials are still here doing a lot of nefarious things. And there are those that are saying that no, they've left, and they left because these positive extraterrestrials arrived in our solar system. And what I've noticed in terms of my analysis of this is that those that are saying the negative ETs are here, they don't really know too much about the positive extraterrestrials. That's the pattern that I've recognized. And naturally, if you're just focused on the negative extraterrestrials, then yeah, you're not going to recognize that there are positive extraterrestrials that are here as well, kind of mitigating and balancing or changing the situation when it comes to what is happening on the Earth. And so this is something that I think is very important, because in 2021 there were a number of sources that described the arrival of advanced extraterrestrials called the Seeders. That's from Elena Danan. That's the term she uses. Others talk about the arrival of the 24 civilizations, the founders, JP, who was active US Army at the time. He says that he was part of a convoy that was run by US Space Command to greet these positive extraterrestrials that have arrived in our solar system. And it's very interesting that JP's interactions with different extraterrestrials, whether off planet or on planet, that they have all been positive. So that also supports this idea that the negative ones have been forced to leave. And there are a number of other sources that describe this process. But Alex Collier, he is also one of those sources that says that the negative extraterrestrials have left our solar system. Elon Musk, he is transforming X to support citizen journalism rather than continuing to support the legacy media. Now, this is a story that has come out on a number of news sites. Newsmax is one of these alternative conservative sites, and it's pointing to Musk pivoting X to support Trump, shaping a new conservative hub. And what this article essentially says is not that X is becoming a conservative site. What X is doing under Elon Musk is going to the political center. It's making itself a free speech platform. And because a lot of the legacy media has taken a very strong pro-left, progressive policy or approach, that they are not going to be given any kind of priority on X, and instead X will be prioritizing alternative media, which is much more balanced and doesn't promote either the right wing or the left wing view, but is more kind of like a centrist position. And I think this is where X really becomes very important, because as a platform that is going to be facilitating people finding the truth, it's going to be very critical for people to be able to share that. And so the ones that are interested in finding the truth typically tend to be in the alternative media, because the legacy media is deeply corrupted. And a lot of the legacy media just get talking points sent to them by mysterious, powerful actors early morning. And those talking points are regurgitated again and again. And there have been a number of media commentators, such as Mark Dice, who talk about that identify how the mainstream media just regurgitates these talking points that seem to always favor kind of like left-wing or democratic priorities. So the legacy media has, as I said, is corrupt, and also it's been the key factor in maintaining the secrecy system set up around UFOs, extraterrestrial life, and secret space programs. And citizen journalism is what's going to crack open the secrecy system and allow the truth emerge. So this has got nothing to do with being a political conservative, because, I mean, I'm sure, and even I'm very kind of like supportive of many issues that are embraced by those on the political left. The critical thing here is that citizen journalists want to know the truth on these topics. And this is why citizen journalists are more likely to dig for the truth and then promote it on their social media platforms or their channels. And that's very different to mainstream media, where you really just have editors and journalists following talking points. And any journalist, and I've spoken to a few mainstream journalists, and they say, look, we want to talk about these issues that you've raised on your Exopolitics site, but we can't, our editor won't allow us. Okay, so here is a briefing that was sent to me. This was from Jeff Lawrence, and he put together a briefing document, 21 pages. So it's a PDF. So if you go to my Twitter feed and just click the link, you will be taken to this. And here's the Tiny Earl, and it's pretty easy, just tinyearl.com, JFK-V-MJ12. And it is a very helpful summary, 20 to 23 page summary of the Kennedy assassination, the role of MJ12 in that, and the Roswell crash and the cover-up. So this is very good. The only thing that I would add to this is that that if you want to dig deeper into a lot of these sources, then my book from 2013, Kennedy's Last Stand, I go into depth in a lot of these issues. But that's a book, and this is a 23-page briefing document, and so I think it's very succinct and very helpful for people that are, wanting in a one document to get to distill the essential points about the Kennedy assassination, the role of MJ-12, and the evidence behind that. Here is an interview I did with Dr. Marvin Atudorei, a Romanian researcher, where he has been investigating the alleged haul of records under the Bugej Mountains in Romania. And here we did the interview in front of what he believes is a possible entrance to the Hall of Records. Now, he's a very important researcher for the reason that he has been able to confirm that Radu Cinema and Caesar Brad, these are the people that respectively wrote or were described in the Transylvania Sunrise series, that they are real individuals, that they are not composite characters, they are not fictional, that they are real. So very important researcher. Here is Christopher Sharp, who I think did an excellent job in describing the role of the CIA in UFO crash retrieval operations. In an article that he wrote on his newspaper site or his blog site, he described how the CIA got control of the retrieved 1933 Italian flying saucer after fascist Italy's capitulation in the Second World War. He describes the process by which the CIA and the Pentagon cooperate in finding and retrieving crashed UFOs and bringing them back to the US for an initial examination by the US Office of Naval Research and other places like Wright-Patterson before being handed off to private contractors such as General Dynamics. Now, I did an interview and worked a little bit with Clifford Stone, who was he was recruited by the US Air Force for these crash retrieval operations, and he said he performed a couple of dozen of these crash retrieval operations around the world, and he described the guy running it as this civilian, and he had a senior rank, and that it was very clear that this was a CIA officer who had some kind of military background. And Clifford Stone described Operation Moondust, which was a program associated with finding crashed UFOs of extraterrestrial origin all over the world, and elite teams would be sent to retrieve that craft and to sanitize the area so that civilians don't come in and take away parts, and to make sure that the mass media didn't write about it. And he also talked about another program called Blue Fly, where the UFO remains would be shipped to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So that's very interesting. So it tells us that both the Office of Naval Research and Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, they were the two principal drop-off points for craft that had been retrieved by these elite teams working with the CIA around the world. And that once the Navy and the Air Force experts had a look at the retrieved craft, then they would hand them off to private contractors such as General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, Skunk Works, Boeing's Phantom Works, and so forth. Okay, so Sharp's article explains why it was that the CIA Director Alan Dulles was the first person President John F. Kennedy approached in June of 1961 to learn about classified UFO files as was first revealed in the Majestic documents. Okay, and Sharp also makes the point these operations understood the recovery of non-human materials in cave systems involving elements of the US Army. So that was very interesting. That kind of caught my attention because I have been for the last few years now talking about the covert missions of JP, who was serving with the US Army up until August of this year. And he described multiple covert missions to underground cave systems where he saw these ancient artifacts and non-human materials. So I've discussed those missions into these cave systems where he saw these artifacts and non-human materials and beings in US Army Insider Missions Book 2 and 3. So here's the article. If you are interested, it is, I think, well written and definitely worth taking a look at. It is on Christopher Sharp's website, liberationtimes.com. The CIA and DoD engaged in decades-long retrieval, tracking, and exploitation of UFOs, including Italian Magenta craft, sources reveal. So very important article. So I do recommend taking a look at that. Okay, so here now we have some of the testimonies of individuals that appeared in the UAP hearing held on Wednesday. That was the Congressional UAP hearing in front of two subcommittees from the House of Representatives Oversight Committee. Now, Mike Gold's testimony, it was pretty underwhelming because he was someone that was essentially talking up the expertise of NASA, how NASA does a great job in analyzing data, that NASA is transparent. I mean, things that just, to me, sounds like science fiction. And he doesn't share any firsthand experiences. And he is saying that for NASA to get more involved in the UFO phenomenon, that it needs better data, and that better data can only come from more refined sensor instruments, which obviously cost a lot of money. And so the way to solve the UFO problem is to throw a lot of money at NASA. I mean, that's really what he is proposing here, which is preposterous. Because NASA has all kinds of advanced technologies that it uses for sensing. Well, possibly we might be talking more about the NRO and that's the National Reconnaissance Office or the National Geospatial Agency. I mean, they have satellites orbiting the Earth that are monitoring space and the Earth all the time. So they would be having high quality data all the time. So I can understand why NASA might say that, well, unless they have their own satellite surveillance systems, that they're not going to be able to answer the UFO mystery. But nevertheless, you have that information with the NRO, the NGA. Why would you want to duplicate that with NASA? Give NASA, extra funding so it could put a lot of satellites in space. I mean, if the government wanted to really reveal to the public what's going on, I mean, you got all the data there with the NRO, the NGA, National Geospatial Agency. It could be revealed, and they're not revealing it because they don't want to keep this secret. So, and enabling NASA to duplicate that would just, I think, lead to another kind of like just another layer of government bureaucracy involved in the cover-up. Okay, so here's something that really took me by surprise. I was nominated to be an advisor to the incoming Trump administration on innovative technology. So, as I said, this was something that I was not aware of, but there was a site, a forum established by Robert Kennedy Jr., and this website, this forum, was designed to get the public to nominate individuals that they think would be helpful for the Trump administration, tackling a wide range of issues. So this particular forum, I mean, it has quite a range of nominees. You can see here, if you go to the forum, it lists the different nominees for various positions. There's 4,000 positions in the Trump administration that are being promoted. So this is something that people can vote on and have their favorite experts talk about this. So here you have me appearing for technology, so innovative technology. So if I was successful in joining the Trump administration in some capacity, I mean, obviously that would, to me, I would consider that a great honor, because I think the Trump administration is probably more likely to reveal what is going on concerning these suppressed technologies than what would have happened under the Biden administration. So when it comes to innovative technology, here I'm talking about free energy, anti-gravity, med beds, a range of technologies that have been mentioned by secret space program witnesses or by contactees. And certainly I would be sharing that with whoever was receptive to that information within the Trump administration. So we'll see where this goes. I definitely will let you know if I am contacted and if I am interviewed for a position. But at the moment, it's just a nomination. I have received, I think it is a couple, close to 2,000 votes so far, and 1,687 votes. So I don't know what the threshold is for getting an interview, whether it's 2,000, 5,000, but we'll see where this goes. Okay, I reposted this. This is the opening statements by participants in the UAP Congressional hearing. So with this particular tweet, you can take a look at the full speeches of all of the presenters that were at the meeting, and I will give you a summary of that congressional meeting very shortly. So, but the opening statements are available online. Here was, I think, something that was very interesting, and that is Luis Elizondo's opening statement for the Congressional UAP hearing. He proposed 3 actions to rectify the problems raised by lack of proper government oversight, transparency, and accountability. So these are: 1, a single point of contact responsible for a whole of government approach to the UAP issue. Now, I think that this is a good idea, that you have, rather than a range of different agencies responsible for the UAP issue, that you have a single point of contact. Now, that doesn't need to be an individual. It could be a representative of an organization. So, for example, in the UAP Disclosure Act that was proposed for 2023, there was a single point of contact that was this UAP review board of 9 experts. Second, a national UAP strategy that will promote transparency and help restore the American public's trust. Okay, so yeah, transparency, that is truly a buzzword when it comes to UAP strategy. And yes, transparency and restoring America's trust. Now, the key here, though, is you can be transparent only with regard to the information that has been declassified and is available for public release. Classified information, by definition, is something that is not made available. So how can you be transparent and restore the American public's trust if a lot of the issues concerning UFOs are classified? And that is the truth here. I mean, there are multiple layers of classification. I think Luis Elizondo was exposed to some levels of UFO information, but I think when it came to deeper levels, I don't think he was introduced to that at all. But as far as he's concerned, the levels that he's made aware of in terms of this ATIP program, that he ran. That was an informal program within the Pentagon that he ran from around 2008, 2009, up until his resignation in 2017. That really focused on UAP sightings and where they were occurring. And so, that to me is kind of like the most surface level information when it comes to UFOs, that they're appearing, they're being sighted, they're interacting with military assets and flying over sensitive military facilities, and that this is something that should be made available to the American public. And I think transparency on that is good, and that seems to be what he is focused on, because he says that that he was aware of where the information was not being released, that the photos, the videos, or especially when it comes to high resolution photos and videos of the UFO data that had been captured by the Pentagon, that was not being released. So that's as far as the transparency goes. But when it comes to the deeper levels of the phenomenon, which is UFO crash retrievals, the capture of non-human intelligence, and then we get into the whole deep underground military bases, reverse engineering programs, secret agreements, contact with human-looking extraterrestrials and non-human-looking extraterrestrials. All of that is very, very highly classified, and the possibility that the Pentagon will make that transparent is like, hell will freeze over first unless we make it. If we, the general public, make it something that is public, and that is by us becoming citizen diplomats. I mean, where we are having contact with extraterrestrials and we reveal that information to the world, because you're not going to get that from the Pentagon. You're going to get that from the general public. Third, a protected environment, so whistleblowers desperate to do the right thing can come forward without fear. I think that's great. Whistleblowers do need to come forward. They do need to be protected. They definitely need to have some powerful ombudsman or some inspector general there to ensure that they aren't retaliated against, lose their careers, lose their pensions, and whatever. So these are all very sensible actions, and they're worthy of public support. But I would add a fourth action, and that is along the lines of what I was just saying. For, quote, provide a supportive environment for those claiming to have had face-to-face contact with non-human intelligence to share their testimonies without fear of public ridicule and retaliation, end quote. Well, that's me. I mean, that was my statement, so I'm quoting myself here. But I think that is really important. People are having face-to-face contact. It's been happening since the 1950s. And across the board, most UFO researchers do not show any interest in this. Aside from a few like Dr. Diane Pasulka, who has expressed some interest in these face-to-face contacts. But I've been researching this for several decades now, and starting from the George Adamski case, there are many cases of credible people having face-to-face contact with extraterrestrials, and their information has been excluded, ridiculed. And so we need to change that. And that needs to be changed, because this is where I think the truth will be revealed. We don't need governments. I mean, it would be great if the Pentagon were to declassify a lot of its records, but quite frankly, I just don't see any chance of that ever happening. But what I think is going to happen is we are going to have more and more extraterrestrials that are going to want to help our planet evolve, and that means that the secrecy system has to be overturned, and they're going to reveal a lot of what's really been happening in space. So I think this is where the truth is eventually going to come, and so that's where this supportive environment has to be created for those having face-to-face contact with extraterrestrials. Now, I think this is important, face-to-face contact with extraterrestrials, as opposed to channelers. Now, I have in the past supported some of the channeled information, because I think some channeling information is helpful. there are some channelers that I think are very accurate, and I would include the Ra material, the Seth material, and that is the Jane Roberts material, and there are a few others that I would include, such as the Only Planet of Choice by Phyllis Schlemmer, where she talked about the Nine. But generally speaking, the problem with channeling is that you do not know who's on the other side. No matter how good a channeler you are, I mean, you have to take it on faith that whoever's on the other side is who they are, who they say they are, and you don't know. And that's why I think that contactees, people who have had face-to-face contact with extraterrestrials, their information is more relevant and more reliable because they know who they're contacting. They can feel, they can interact with them, they can get intuitions and insights into the motivations of these beings. But if you're just receiving channeled information, you don't have that. And now, I don't want to dismiss channeling altogether, because I think there are a lot of good channelers out there, but I don't think it's something that would really be kind of like equivalent to contactee information, especially if you are trying to attract serious scientific and political and public and legacy media interest, because I think channeling would be easily ridiculed, because at the end of the day, anyone can say, well, we don't know who's on the other side. But if you say, for example, like Elena Danaan, she says, well, Thorhan, I'm meeting with this being called Thorhan. Well, has anyone else met Thorhan? Well, it turns out that some others have met Thorhan. Danny Henderson, for example, says that she has met Thorhan. And you can confirm that. It's part of the scientific process. You can confirm the information from contactees such as Elena Danaan, Alex Collier, JP is also a contactee, Jean-Charles Moyen, many others that I think have relevant contact experiences that is confirmable. Whereas channeling, how do you confirm? How do you confirm channeled information? Okay, so here we have the Washington Examiner that gives more details about the Nominees for the People Forum created by Robert Kennedy Jr. that includes nominations for up to 4,000 positions. So this Washington Times article, it talks about RFK takes Trump appointee decision to the public. So that's a very important kind of initiative that RFK really does want to get public feedback on who should be filling these positions for the incoming Trump administration. And so, yeah, he goes over various nominees, and here are some of the people that are mentioned, the top nominees as of Tuesday morning: Brandon Herrera, Dr. Charles Fagenholtz, Robert Seppier, I'm aware of him, myself, were among the forum's top nominees as of Tuesday morning. So I think this is a novel way of doing it, how to fill a presidential administration, get public feedback. I think this is really an excellent idea, and hopefully something comes of it. I will let you know if I am contacted, as I said. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, they have been tapped to head this Department of Government Efficiency. And this is a statement from Donald Trump where he announces that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy will be leading this Department of Government Efficiency. And so he goes through their suitability for doing this. And this is, I think, his effort, Trump's effort, along with Musk and Ramaswamy, to cut government waste. And I think that is very, very important. Now, the problem here is that government waste is not something that is a byproduct of people just being inefficient. Government waste is a cover for generating an enormous black budget behind the books. This is the way in which the deep state is able to fund all of its covert projects dealing with extraterrestrial life, secret space programs, and ancient civilizations. So if you are Musk, or for Musk and Ramaswamy, they need to approach this government inefficiency problem not so much from the perspective that you just have inefficient government out there and you just sack people, trim government. I mean, all of that is helpful, but at its root, governments are inefficient, or various departments are inefficient because they're designed to be that way. This is the problem. And so what I would advise Elon and Vivek to do is that they contact and consult with Catherine Austin Fitts, because back in the 1990s, she tried and failed to bring about reforms to the chronic inefficiencies in the Department of Housing and Urban Development. She was an assistant secretary for that particular department. And what she learned over the subsequent years was that those inefficiencies were not just the result of people not thinking through what they were doing, that these inefficiencies were covers for a huge money laundering operation that went to $1 trillion black budget run by the CIA, and that the money was then being funneled through the Pentagon to covert programs dealing with ETs, secret space programs, deep underground military bases, etc. Now, I wrote a research paper about this problem. I wrote the research paper about it back in November 2003. So we're talking 21 years ago now. Wow. I was still at American University at that time, and this was republished in Scoop. So I talked about this CIA black budget, which isn't to be confused with the official black budget. There are two black budgets. The one that the public is aware of, experts are aware of, that's the budget that's generated off the books to fund the intelligence community. And that stands at around, I think today, around $80 billion. The unofficial black budget, that's the one that's raised through illicit activities such as pump and dump economics on Wall Street, the drug trade, sex trafficking, white-collar crime, and so forth. That is what the CIA is able to raise illicitly, and that is more in the vicinity of $1 trillion. Back then, that was the estimate from Catherine Austin Fitts and others such as Phil Schneider. So that would be my advice, that they learn how to deal with this black budget, because until you deal with the black budget that is generated by these government inefficiencies, I don't know how successful you're going to be in curbing those inefficiencies. You can curb some, you can sack bureaucrats across the spectrum, but at the end of the day, the amount of money going through that department, that is what the deep state is going to jealously guard, because that is being used for funding these secret space programs, DUMs, and so forth. So I think Elon and Vivek really need to be briefed on that, and Catherine Austin Fitts is a good place to start. Now, here is an article in the Debrief concerning Donald Trump and his while he portrays skepticism when it comes to the UFO issue, he's clearly supportive of UFO UAP disclosure. And I think his appointment of people like Marco Rubio, who is being confirmed will be the Secretary of State, Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, and John Ratcliffe, CIA Director, in the new Trump administration, augurs well for UFO disclosure, because all of those individuals have shown an interest in UFO disclosure and these UAP hearings that were held in the US Congress back in July of 2023 and more recently that was held again in the House of Representatives. So, yes, so I think I totally agree with Micah Hanks that under Trump 2.0, this is going to be an administration that is very friendly to disclosure. And I believe that there are going to be major disclosures happening under the Trump administration when it comes to UFOs and extraterrestrial life. So that is something. There is an update from JP that I will be releasing next week, first on Patreon and then on YouTube, where I will be talking about the Trump administration already working with these human-looking extraterrestrials for disclosure. Okay, so here we have my summary of the UAP hearing conducted by the two subcommittees that belong to the House Oversight Committee that was held on Wednesday with these 4 experts. And you had members of Congress asking questions and you had answers from these experts. So this is my summary of what was said. Luis Elizondo, he said that there's a multi-decades-long UFO crash retrieval program. So good that he corroborated what David Grush had said earlier. Whistleblowers were being punished and threatened for revealing UFO information. Again, very important point. UFOs accelerate at over 1,000 G. He even mentioned 2,000 G. So these were clearly craft that are not being piloted by humans as we understand it, nor do they use material that is part of our material sciences, because at those accelerations, they would simply fall apart, destabilize. So this shows that these UFOs, they are some kind of advanced technologies that are way beyond conventional technologies that we are aware of. UFOs involve non-human intelligence. The Pentagon is hiding info from Congress and the public. Very important point. He confirms that the Pentagon blocked transfer of UAP material from Lockheed Martin to Bigelow Aerospace Corporation. So that's an important revelation that the Bigelow Aerospace knew that Lockheed had in its possession some UFO material, wanted to gain access, but it was blocked by the Pentagon. And UFOs are intruding into sensitive military airspace and interfering with nuclear assets. Okay, very points that have been made previously. Tim Gallaudet, the retired Rear Admiral from the US Navy, he talked about the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office under Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick when he went in to give them a briefing on what he knew concerning UFOs. He was exposed to what he described as a kind of influence operation to get him to backtrack, to get him to not be so outspoken on the UFO issue, especially when it came to him describing this incident from 2015, where he says that he was serving with the US Navy, where he saw an official email concerning this UFO that's now known as the 2015 Go Fast incident, and that it was then withdrawn from circulation at that kind of flag officer level. That what that indicated was that the UAP incident had become highly classified. Navy pilot safety has been threatened by UFOs. Okay, that's something, again, that's emphasizing the national security implications of UFOs. Unidentified submersible objects have outpaced US submarines by orders of magnitude. So there are things in the ocean, USOs, that are much faster than US nuclear submarines. And I think these US nuclear submarines, I'm not sure what they're capable of doing under the water, maybe 30, 40 knots. But these USOs, they can go several hundred knots. And UAPs are non-human intelligence. Michael Schellenberger, he released this document called Immaculate Constellation, given to him by a whistleblower, an anonymous whistleblower, who wrote the document. I think it's a 12-page document. And what it revealed was that Immaculate Constellation is an unacknowledged special access program concerning data collection of UAPs. The author of that Immaculate Constellation report is credible, according to Schellenberger, and other sources have confirmed that this USAP does exist. This Immaculate Constellation contains hundreds, if not thousands, of high-resolution images of UFOs that have not been released. So this goes along the lines of what Luis Elizondo was saying in his opening statement and during the interview, that the Pentagon is holding on to hundreds of these UFO cases with high-resolution images, and that they're not releasing them. And this is where, you can have transparency on that, totally. I think that's realistic. You can have transparency. And I think submitting this document to the US Congress starts that process of putting pressure, congressional pressure on the Pentagon to release these hundreds, if not thousands, of UAPs. Now, this is where we need to consider that this is just data. This is unevaluated data that's been accumulated. You have no kind of analyses, investigations of those UFOs that are being requested for public release. You're just talking about the data, the photos and the videos, that they should be released. Now, when it comes to the data, this is where it's going to get very, very interesting, because that is classified at a higher level than the raw images and videos. So we can have the images, the videos released, I think, to bring about transparency. That's what Elizondo, Schellenberger, and all of that are arguing. But when it comes to the analyses, the evaluations of that data, that's going to be classified at a higher level. And frankly, I'm skeptical whether the Pentagon will ever release that, because what are they going to release? What would they release? They would say, well, this object that was observed, whether it was the Go Fast video or the 2004 Nimitz incident, that evaluation might be that this is breakthrough technology being developed by a US corporation. And that, I think, is probably the case. This is where it's unlikely we're going to get those evaluations and those reports released anytime soon. And he also said that UAP craft were orbs, discs, triangles, and organic. That's interesting, that these craft appear to be alive, or they can, the structure or the shape can change. And that's interesting, because that conforms with what other witnesses have said about some of these more advanced craft. That certainly JP has said that. David Adair has also made a similar point, that the UAP craft are organic. They're alive. They have a consciousness, and that they can change shape. Very interesting. Now, Michael Gold. This was almost a joke. He was really saying NASA is a paradigm of UFO transparency. He wasn't kidding. It's just, it was laughable that he was saying that. He's making the point that the vast majority of UAPs are drones and experimental aircraft, advocates tailored instruments to examine UAP data. So I already spoke about that, kind of expensive sensors, whether we're talking about satellites or high altitude sensor instruments to look for UAPs and to get much better data than cameras and videos that are being sent by the general public, or even captured by the kind of instruments in these Air Force or Navy planes, that they aren't good enough for NASA, that NASA wants something that is tailored exclusively for UAP. So, and he recommends more funding for NASA. So, not sure why he was there on that panel. I guess they just wanted to make it look like NASA's doing a great job, and it's really a joke that NASA covers up UAP data and evidence of extraterrestrial life all the time. The moon has many, many artifacts, ancient artifacts on it. Mars has many ancient artifacts. NASA images showing those artifacts have been covered up and been blurred for decades. And we know this from the 2021 Disclosure Project, where you had Donna Hare and Ken Wolfe, two people that were familiar with these NASA images, and they described how this imagery was being suppressed or being kind of like cut out of the imagery. They're using kind of software to do that. So the overall, I think that this panel didn't touch on those areas that I think are very important for us to make big breakthroughs when it comes to understanding UFOs, UAPs, and that is people having direct physical contact with non-human intelligence that are associated with UFOs. No one on the panel, they were asked that question, and no one on the panel had knowledge of such contacts. So they don't know about any of these contactees that I've mentioned earlier. These people are not familiar with them. Similarly, when it came to communications with non-human intelligence, now Luis Elizondo made a comment, well, there's different types of communication. There's verbal and non-verbal, and these UFOs, they are communicating non-verbally because they're showing themselves above military facilities or buzzing military aircraft, and they're clearly sending a message. And that is true. They are sending a message. But when it comes to verbal communication, he doesn't know anything about that. And we know from contactees that these extraterrestrials on these craft, or the non-human intelligence associated with these craft, are verbally communicating with people. And interestingly, when it came to claims of non-human intelligence and genetic experiments, another question asked by the panel, were the NHI creating hybrid humans? No one on the panel had a response. So, they're not familiar with the reams of abduction research by people like Dr. David Jacobs or Bud Hopkins, where there are hundreds and hundreds of cases of people interacting with these extraterrestrials, and that they have been subjected to these hybrid genetic experiments. They don't know anything about that. So overall, the panel didn't break any new ground from its July 2023 predecessor, but I think where it's useful is that it will continue to maintain a high level of public interest in UFOs. Maybe that's all that the goal was here, is to just keep the public interested in UFOs, interested in non-human intelligence, without giving many answers, because that is what I consider to be like a shaping operation. If you wanted to prepare the public for some kind of future contingency, like a false flag alien event, then what you want to do is you want to keep the public kind of interested in the UFO issue without informing them to any great depth. And that's what this panel did. It kept the public interested without giving any information, without giving any of the crown jewels away. So I ultimately think that this hearing, its ultimate purpose was to just shape public perceptions that UFOs are real, they're a national security threat. There are hundreds of reports of these. The government claims it doesn't know, or the Pentagon claims it doesn't know what they are. And I think that is a shaping operation, preparing the public for something else. Now, whether that's going to be a false flag event, which I think is what the deep state is still planning to do, or whether it is a genuine disclosure of human-looking extraterrestrials and other positive extraterrestrials. That's the other way in which this can pan out. And I will be talking about that next week when I discuss JP's new update. Okay, now here is something that's very interesting. Susan Gough, who is now in charge of the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and is also a senior official in the Department of Defense. I think she is the Deputy Secretary of Defense, as I recall, or the very high level. But she's been outed as a professional psychological officer. Luis Elizondo outed her that when it comes to UFO UAP issues, that she is a psychological officer, and that is someone that kind of like shapes public perceptions on the UFO issues for whatever agenda it is that the military has. So there's a paper that she authored in April 2003 where she discusses the role of the Psychological Strategy Board and the Operations Coordinating Board in Cold War operations. Well, around the same time, coincidentally, in July of 2003, while I was still affiliated with American University, I wrote a research study pointing out the role of both of these boards in UFO-related issues using the Cold War as a cover. So here's the paper that I wrote back in July 4, 2003, while I was still at American University. And it is titled Political Management of the Extraterrestrial Presence, the Challenge to Democracy and Liberty in America. And so I talk about those two boards, the Psychological Strategy Board and the Operations Coordinating Board, as being set up to manage the UFO issue. And so I found it very synchronistic that Susan Gough was writing about those two organizations back in 2003, because I assume that she was doing similar work to what those boards were doing. And that's what the outing by Luis Elizondo suggests, that she is performing a similar function to what those boards were doing as far as Cold War operations and UFOs were concerned. So very interesting. And again, that suggests that this whole UAP hearing is a shaping operation for something to come. And while the deep state intends it to be something bad, can the White Hats, the Earth Alliance, co-opt that to make something positive, which would be disclosure of the benevolent extraterrestrials, the human-looking extraterrestrials? Because as I mentioned, people are having face-to-face contact with these human-looking extraterrestrials. People like JP, Elena Denan, Jean-Charles Moyen, Alex Collier, and so forth, they're talking about these face-to-face contacts with these human-looking extraterrestrials. Now, this is not something that the mainstream media is covering, nor are UFO researchers that are focused on the Arrow office and on ATIP and the ORSAP and Luis Elizondo. None of them are talking about these human-looking extraterrestrials, because I think that if the human-looking extraterrestrial information started to come out, that would inspire people, that would give them hope, and that would change the nature of the game. So they're not releasing that information because they don't want people to be inspired by the potential extraterrestrial contact. They want people to be scared, frightened, that, we don't know what they are. They could be these enigmatic beings that abduct people, that their craft kind of like are a threat to air safety, and kind of like depicting them in all of these negative ways, because that sets the scene for the deep state to perform a false flag event. Now, can the Earth Alliance prevent that? I think they can. Can they co-opt it to turn that around so that rather than a negative extraterrestrial or some kind of false flag alien attack happening, or the UFOs attacking without it being clear who they are, that can be co-opted to make it that it's to promote genuine disclosure by human-looking extraterrestrials. Okay, here is a story, an interview I did with Sheila Seppi, where she describes her experiences as an extraterrestrial walk-in in 1999, that she was a very sick mother of 3 children, and she had an extraterrestrial walk-in experience by agreement where the soul inhabiting that physical body left, and a extraterrestrial soul, a starseed, came in and took over that body. And she describes the process by which she kind of came to terms that she was in fact a walk-in, because the changes were so dramatic, and some of the changes were quite miraculous, because all of these serious illnesses that she had just miraculously disappeared, and all of a sudden she was full of life again and playing with her children, whereas previously she was kind of like laying prone on the sofa and could only play with her children from the sofa because she just lacked energy to play with her children. So yeah, a fascinating case. I think walk-ins are very real. I know that Sheila shared a lot of data about walk-ins, and I think what I appreciate about Sheila is that she's also very analytical. She understands the difference between people having a genuine walk-in experience and people having a delusional breakdown, and also demonic possession, that these are things that do happen. So how do you separate a genuine walk-in experience involving an extraterrestrial from someone having some kind of delusional breakdown or someone suffering from demonic possession? So we discussed that in the interview, and I think she gives very good answers to that. So definitely well worth watching that interview with Sheila Seppi, and I do hope to be able to interview her in the future. Okay, so here is a interview I did with Gene Decode. Now, this is the Patreon version that was released on Thursday, November 14. And it concerns how the Illuminati took over a military network of deep underground military bases to create corporate-controlled secret space programs and satanic lodges. So that's my latest interview with Gene Decode. I think this is our fourth interview together. So that was released on Thursday afternoon. So it will be available for the next 4 days exclusively on Patreon. So you do need to be a Patreon member. For $7 a month, you get you get to access these pre-release videos. You get to watch the videos commercial free, and you get to support me and meet my expenses in putting out quality interviews for you. I do have a videographer who does a great job. That's Jazz Marlin, and Jazz has been working with me for quite a few years now, actually close to a couple of decades now. So yeah, you support me and the team for Exopolitics today by becoming a Patreon subscriber. Okay, so I did an interview with Shehnaz Soni, a NASA rocket scientist, about UFOs and organic technologies on an episode of Conflict Radio. And so there's the link here on my Twitter feed. You can watch that. The channel is Conflict Radio. So just type in Conflict Radio. Michael from Conflict Radio does a great job in getting together very interesting guests. And Shehnaz Soni is currently a NASA scientist working at the Marshall Space Flight Center, and she is very interested in these alternative technologies or organic technologies, also quantum physics, and how consciousness is relevant to the UFO phenomenon. So definitely take a look at that interview. Denmark just became the 48th nation to sign the US-led Artemis Accords. Now, I think what's noteworthy here is that while you're getting more and more countries, major countries, Denmark, I mean, it's not a very big country, and its space program is probably minuscule when you compare it to, say, other major spacefaring countries, say, such as Britain or France. Nevertheless, the Artemis Accords does have, aside from China and Russia, all the world's major spacefaring nations that have signed on. Now, you compare that to China and its International Lunar Research Station initiative that has 13 nations. Now, why the discrepancy? Because China is part of the BRICS coalition, and there's a lot of countries joining the BRICS coalition. So why isn't China's International Lunar Research Station initiative as popular as the BRICS? Well, the reason is that most countries that have space faring technologies, they understand that the US is more likely to share its advanced technologies that are used for space exploration as opposed to China. That China is very reticent to share its tech, that China is in the mode of, I guess, I'll say it bluntly, stealing the intellectual property of other nations when it comes to advanced technologies. And most of the spacefaring nations know this, which is why China was not allowed to join the International Space Station. Russia was, but China wasn't, because it has shown that it is still does not respect international intellectual property rights, and it will steal these. And until it changes its attitude towards that, China is being excluded for a lot of these Western-led international technology agreements and initiatives, such as the Artemis Accords. Okay, now here is something interesting. Now there's a project called Project 25 that proposes that Space Force ought to take a more offensive posture under the new Trump administration. Now, as I understand it, Trump has, and the Project 25 was promoted by the Heritage Foundation, and it's, I believe, 900 pages of policy proposals for the new Trump administration. Now, Trump has publicly said that he agrees with some, he disagrees with many, but he has not embraced this Project 25. So as far as Project 25 is concerned, what I want to say here is that it just proposes that Space Force take an offensive posture. Now, we don't know if Trump actually supports that, but I think that it's inevitable that Space Force and US Space Command will become more assertive in outer space as the advanced technologies become available to make space travel less expensive, and many more nations and corporations get involved in space exploration and tourism and mining and all of these different things where there's big profits to be made, or territories to be colonized, and technologies to be investigated out there. Rogue corporations involved in secret space programs are already a major problem, according to multiple witnesses and insiders and victims. And this is likely to grow in time. So we already have slave labor happening on planets like Mars or the Moon, in these corporate-run facilities, some of which are controlled. Well, Deep State is very much involved in the abuses of human subjects all over our solar system and the galactic slave trade. So this is where Space Force, Space Command has to have teeth. If it doesn't have teeth, these rogue corporations and deep state space programs out there, they're not going to bother to hide their activities or change their activities, because Space Force, Space Command has no teeth, and they'll just continue to do this. So in order for it to change, this is where I think Space Force does need to really develop teeth so that it can take down these rogue operations in space. Now, what is not generally known is that in 2021, a multinational alliance of 14 nations led by Space Command reached agreements with extraterrestrial civilizations to take charge of our solar system. So this was information that was first released by Elena Danaan, and there have been other sources that have corroborated this. I've mentioned JP being part of a deep space mission to Jupiter, where they met an incoming group of extraterrestrials. There was a remote viewing of the facility, the Ashtar Command facility in Jupiter's atmosphere, that corroborated that element of Danan's or Elena's information here concerning this meeting involving the 14 nations with Space Command meeting with the different extraterrestrial organizations. Now, in the Artemis Accords, it's envisaged that there will be safety zones in space. So this is going to be very important for Space Force and Space Command in the decades ahead to protect safety zones that are part of the Artemis Accords. I mean, there's 48 nations now. Who knows where that ends up? You know, whether it's 80 nations, 100 nations that will be part of the Artemis Accords in the future. All of those nations start up collaborative ventures in space, setting up mining colonies or trade routes, tourism, and so forth. Now, where they're operating, these will likely be declared to be safety zones. And if you have rogue actors in space, and we already know there are rogue actors in space, there are these deep state corporate-run programs that are already doing horrendous things out there. So it's not hard to imagine that they will act as kind of like predators when it comes to space operations, with all of these new Earth companies and multinational initiatives setting up space projects. Who's going to protect these signatories to the Artemis Accords other than Space Force? So I think it is inevitable that Space Force and US Space Command will take more offensive postures in space. And I think that they are the predecessors of what will eventually become something like a Starfleet. And the Artemis Accords will be something that evolves into this kind of Star Trek future. Okay, so here is the final story I want to cover. So the annual All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office report was released on Thursday. And what that report covered was 485 UAP reports from from 2021 up until June 1st, 2024. Now, it says out of these 485 reports, 292 were identified as prosaic objects, you know, birds, Venus, swamp gas, whatever prosaic object explanation you can come up with. So the Arrow's office says that the remaining 193 cases are unresolved. They don't know what they are. So the report states, quote, that to date, Arrow has discovered no evidence of extraterrestrial beings, activity, or technology. So of those remaining 193 cases that haven't been resolved, there's no evidence that these are extraterrestrial technologies, which is kind of strange when you think about it. If you don't know what these objects are, how can you be sure that they're not evidence of extraterrestrial technology? A very strange conclusion. The report further states, quote, to date, Arrow has no indication or confirmation that these activities are attributable to foreign adversaries. So, okay, the Arrow says, well, we don't know if any of those 193 cases, you know, are Russian or Chinese or some other foreign adversary. And the report further states that Arrow's ability to resolve cases remains constrained by a lack of timely and actionable sensor data. Okay, so what they're really saying here is saying, well, you know, the Arrow office, you know, we rely on antiquated sensor data systems such as videos from the general public or photographs from the general public or kind of radar from jet planes or pilot sightings, that if we really want to be able to resolve UFOs for certain, we need to have actionable sensor data. So, you know, that goes along the lines of, well, you know, we need to have satellite telemetry that's dedicated to monitoring the skies for UFOs. So, you know, good luck setting up a satellite system that's looking for UFOs. I mean, you know, as I said before, the NRO, the National Geospatial Agency already have that, but they don't share that data. So if NASA or the Pentagon or the Arrow office want to replicate that, well, I think the likelihood of that data ever being shared is unlikely. So this to me is just a way of kind of like delaying things, saying, well, we don't know what these cases are. We need better sensor systems to be able to make a determinate conclusion. So in summary, the Arrow report tells us that of the 193 unresolved cases, there's no evidence that any ET craft belonged to foreign adversaries, and that if Arrow had better sensor data, more cases could be resolved. So given that this report was prepared under the tenure of the new Arrow director, Dr. John Kozlowski, it looks like Arrow is not deviating much from the approach taken by its previous director. And also there was a roundtable discussion with the media about the latest Arrow report, and Dr. Kozlowski, he stated, quote, "It is also important to underscore that to date Arrow has discovered no verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial beings, activity or technology. None of the cases resolved by Arrow have pointed to advanced capabilities or breakthrough technologies." Now, that's interesting. No, none of the cases resolved by Arrow have pointed to advanced capabilities or breakthrough technologies. Now think about that panel that appeared before the Congress. I mean, you had Admiral Tim Gallaudet, you had Luis Elizondo talking about advanced capabilities of these craft. I mean, Elizondo was saying that there's data in the Pentagon saying that these craft are able to fly or accelerate over 1,000 G, even 2,000 G. And Tim Gallaudet said that these USOs, they're able to outperform nuclear submarines by orders of magnitude. So how can the Arrow office say that none of these UFOs show advanced capabilities or breakthrough technologies? Clearly, there's a mismatch. I mean, Luis Elizondo says that the Pentagon does have files showing these advanced capabilities. And here you have the Arrow office, which is within the Pentagon and also it also works with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, saying that there's no verifiable evidence. So clearly the Arrow office is really doing is part of a public relations exercise. It is just saying that the UFOs are real. We don't know what they are. They're not foreign adversaries. They're not extraterrestrial technologies. We just don't know what they are. But we need better sensor data. We need to have more resources put in, and because this is an important national security problem. Again, this to me is just a shaping operation. This is part of a psychological program to shape the public. You're not revealing any of the truth or the crown jewels when it comes to UFOs. You're just keeping the public wheel spinning in terms of, UFOs are real, there's something there, they're a national security threat, and that's preparing the ground for something to come. As I said, is it going to be a deep state false flag event, or is it going to be the Earth Alliance working with positive extraterrestrials to reveal the existence of these human-looking extraterrestrials that are going to reveal themselves and usher in a Star Trek future? I think that's where we're heading. And I think the deep state is trying to take us down one track, and clearly there are those that want to take us down this other track of human ETs are here. Okay, so that is it. It's been a long one today. I think this has been a very eventful week. Next week, I will be giving you some important updates from JP that does touch on some of the information this week. So again, I want to thank all of you that have supported my Patreon channel. I do really appreciate that. I will be announcing my next monthly briefing webinar this weekend. So that'll be, I think it'll be December 6th or 7th, the first Saturday in December. And so that'll be my next monthly briefing. So I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you and aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. visit exopoliticstoday.com.